More than 25 million residents in Shanghai found themselves in full lockdown in early April as COVID-19 cases in the city surged to new highs. The cosmopolitan hub and home to Asia's biggest stock exchange screeched to a halt and streets were left empty. As mass testing takes place, some of the citywide restrictions have since eased, but China's pandemic playbook remains unchanged.
We haven't seen a very clear exit strategy right now, from China. That's why I think it's very hard to estimate. It's very hard to guess, when will be the end game for this zero-COVID strategy at the moment.
Since March, the number of COVID-19 cases in Shanghai has been on the uptick. With infections breaking records daily, the city's phased lockdowns were extended until a full-scale closure took residents by surprise.
The sentiment, frankly, has been one of shock, frustration, and just confusion. Candidly, I spend a good portion of each day just trying to source food for my family because we are running low on supplies, and the only way that you can kind of reliably get supplies at this moment is with neighborhood and community bulk buying, but the logistics of arranging those purchases take up a lot of time and energy.
For international businesses, China's lockdown meant readjusting operations to meet government restrictions.
In the north already, we have a lockdown in Jilin for 4 weeks. Shenyang is down 3 weeks. Managers stay at home. They can do online work. At the same time, we have closed loops arrangements in our factories. The biggest concern is always, first of all, when does it end? Because there's no clear sign of that.
Many foreign companies are based in Shanghai, and those in the services and manufacturing sectors are feeling the brunt.
Revenue is down, in most cases double-digit, profitability is questioned. And of course, it's not just COVID, it also is the war in Ukraine that has increased commodity prices. Also in manufacturing, if we can't get our trucks across borders into other provinces, there's a big issue. And I would say an estimate 40% of all the trucks are down and cannot be used anymore, drivers not available. So it's quite challenging.
To quantify the cost of China's lockdown, a group of researchers from Chinese and American universities looked at city-to-city truck flows. Their study shows an 8.6% reduction in China's real GDP if full-scale lockdowns are imposed in 4 big cities for a month.
In Shanghai, household consumption as a share of GDP is higher than the national average. So we estimate that lost consumption alone will cost 3.9% of Shanghai's annual GDP in 2022, which translates into a 0.15% direct drag on China's growth for this year.
Experts say hitting China's 5.5% growth target this year will be a challenge, but infrastructure spending could play a part.
The government is leaning back into one of its traditional drivers of growth when there was an announcement of a 14.8 trillion renminbi or 2.3 trillion US dollar investment in infrastructure.
Your infrastructure investment will take a lead in the first half of the year, right? Then followed by the stability of your property markets around the middle of the year. And then hopefully by the middle of the year, you can contain the virus, everything back to normal. Then in the second half of the year, your private consumption starts to recover.
The Shanghai port is the busiest in the world. Bottlenecks there could have ripple effects, not only for China, but for the global supply chain.
Everyone is watching it because these containers, we are seeing a lot of them being stuck right now. They are actually running out of space inside the ports because the shortage of drivers is very real. And some of our customers are jittery because we do not know how this effect is going to trickle down. So we probably will be keeping a very close lookout over the next 2 to 3 months.
Haulio is a Singapore-based digital platform that helps shipping and trucking firms transport containers from port to warehouse. It says the adoption of digital solutions to plan, procurement and logistics has helped clients become more resilient to lockdowns.
Because of the shortage of drivers in China itself, the haulage prices, because of the lack of capacity, a lot of shippers and customers are actually eager to get their boxes out of the ports. We have seen some temporary increase in terms of prices.
Shanghai accounts for about 4% of China's overall GDP, and virus containment could help minimize economic damage.
So if we can stop the virus in Shanghai, but make sure your Jiangsu province, your Zhejiang province still can operating, I think then the impact may not be so significant, right? So in the end, there was a lot of, replacement effect.
Shanghai is the biggest Chinese city to be locked down in the pandemic to date. The restrictions are testing the limits of China's zero-COVID strategy.
It was definitely lockdown overkill that led to this misery that's going on. And again, we all worry that this might be replicated elsewhere. And again, it really needs some rethinking about who do we want to protect. You have to have a booster. You have to live with COVID. It needs a rewiring in attitudes. The KPI at this stage is clearly zero tolerance, and that's what hurts the economy.